In this video, we'll start off with providing a basic overview and navigating the Cisco IOS that exists on Cisco routers and Cisco switches. This will include the different modes, the many help options that we can use, to basic show commands. Now in our presentation video, we talked about the two main exec modes. There is the user mode and there is the privilege mode. By default, when you log on using a console, a telnet, or an SSH session, you'll be placed into the user mode prompt. You know that because you will see a host name like R1, which is for router 1, followed by the symbol of a greater than symbol. This means that we are at the user mode prompt that will provide very limited functionality of show commands. So to view what some of these things that we can do, we can type in question mark to see what can we type in at this prompt. Well, here's some of the things we can do. We can type in exit to exit out of the user mode or the console display. Also log out works. We can type in enable to get to the privilege mode prompt and so forth. One thing that you'll notice here is at the bottom is something that says more. This means there is more pages or more information that we can view. Now we can view the next page of data by pressing the spacebar key on our keyboard, which will display the next page. Or we can view it one line at a time. So let's go back to question mark again. So we see more at the bottom. So to see the next line of data, not the next page, but the next line, we can simply press enter on our keyboard and keep doing it. So those are some of the help options that we can do and how we can use iOS to view multiple pages of content. So the question mark key can allow us to see what commands we can type in at the router prompt that we're at. One of these commands at the user mode prompt that we could type in is enable. That will place us into the privilege mode prompt on the router. So let's go into that mode now. But there's a few shortcuts that we can do here. So let's discuss one of these shortcuts. One of the things that we talked about is we do not need to type in the entire command. Furthermore, you may not know the entire command or what options are presented. So we know to get into the enable mode, we type in enable. But let's assume that you do not know that was the command. Let's say that you know it begins with EN and that's pretty much all you know. Well, there are shortcuts and help options that we can use here. So I can type in EN because that's all I know, followed by the question mark key to see what commands match that description I've typed in so far. And doing that will give us, well, one option, enable. So we can say, that's what we type in. So you can type in ENABLE for enable. So you have that option as well. So at this time, we can simply press enter. That will match the enable command. Now, if there are multiple options here, it will prompt a warning because there are multiple matches. But in this case, it is only one match. So we can just press enter and go into the enable mode. Or we can press the tab key that will complete the command that will spell out enable. This is what we'll be doing a lot in this video series. So at this time, we have enable filled out. Let's press enter, and that will place us into the privilege mode. Now, if there is a password configured, it will prompt us for a password first, then we'll be placed into the privilege mode on the router itself. But it's the same prompt of R1, the name of our router, followed by the pound symbol. So from this point, we can do additional stuff. So doing question mark again, we will see a lot more stuff we can do, like getting to the configuration mode by typing in configure and other options here, which is a lot more compared to the user mode prompt that we showed you before. To go back to the user mode prompt, from the privilege mode prompt, you would type in the command disable. So let's go back to the privilege mode prompt. So we talked about there are many commands that we could type in for viewing some of the operations and information about the device that we're on. One of those commands is show version that we can type in either the user mode or the privilege prompt. So this will provide information on a lot of things. One, we can see the iOS version that is installed on the router device. We can see the uptime that is on the device, followed by the host name. Furthermore, we can see information such as the, scroll down here, as the model number. We also see the amount of memory, the amount of DRAM memory on the device. We see the interfaces that exist. We see the amount of NVRAM memory, and of course the amount of flash memory. And this reflects the configuration register value that is defined on the router as well. Another command that we can type in is show IP interface brief. Now this will provide a summary of all interfaces on the router in terms of the IP address that is assigned, followed by the status, whether it is in a up-up or down-down or a administratively down-down status. So this is a good summary to look at to see if our interfaces are operational and what IP address is configured on those interfaces. If we type in the command show interfaces, this will show information of all of the interfaces on the router device. So we'll go through each one of these. So we'll show information on the status of the interface, whether it's in a down-down or administratively down, or in a up-up status, which is operational. We'll see the MAC address for that interface, followed by the encapsulation that is used, which is more applicable for serial interfaces. We can see the amount of traffic, input and output traffic on the interface in bits per second, including packets per second. Any drops that we can see, and errors, input errors like CRC, frame errors, or output errors like collisions or interface resets, for example. Good information we can look at about the interfaces on the routers itself. But this provides information on all the interfaces, and we may want to look at a particular interface that we're looking at to troubleshoot a problem. Therefore, to look at a particular interface instead of all interfaces on our router or the switch, it's the same command but more defined. We can type in the following. We can say show interface, followed by the interface type, like fast Ethernet, then the ID, like 0/0. This will show information about this interface only. And again, it's the same details. We see the status, we see the MAC address, and of course the speed and duplex information. We see the output drops that could occur, the input-output data rates, input errors, and output errors. The same details, but only for one particular interface that we care about to know what's going on. To view the configuration on the router or the switch, we can use the command show running config, or show run in short. This will provide the active configuration that is used on the device. So some of these commands includes, well, maybe enabling password encryption. We see details on maybe the host name that is defined on the device. We see things like the interfaces that can be configured and other configuration specifics. Remember, the show run is pulling the configuration from the DRAM, which is the active config that is running on our device. We can also view the configuration from the startup config, which comes from the NVRAM, which will be very similar if it's configured on the router device as well. And last, to get into the configuration mode to make config changes for the interfaces, for IP addresses, default gateways, passwords, host names, etc., you need to be in the config mode, and to do that we type in the following: configure terminal. Once you do that, the prompt would change to be R1, the host name, followed by a config, then pound. This is the global configuration mode that is required for doing any configuration on the device. Without it, you cannot do any config changes. So you must be in the config mode. Very important.